a flurry of new developments in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Inside Russian territory, officials report shelling in Belgorod. This is just over the border from Ukraine. This is an area that the Russians have been using to resupply troops inside Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians, they reported strikes in the Dnipro region here. We have video of some of the aftermath. You can see what looks like a parking facility here, largely destroyed. The cars there, and you can see the smoldering ashes there. So nearby in Dnipro, in Zaporizhzhia, the Zaporizhzhia power plant, which is right about there, power was off for some time, but it has now been restored. That is Europe's largest nuclear power plant. You can see the specs here. Safety continues to be a top concern for many officials, and perhaps most importantly at this point, from a strategic standpoint, confusion over the eastern city of Bakhmut. Russia says it has seized control of that city. Ukraine seems to suggest they have a potential strategic advantage there. With us now is CNN military analyst, retired Major General James Spider Marks. Spider, I have a close-up here of Bakhmut. You can see the city, the downtown area right here. There seems to be broad agreement that the Russians have total or essentially near total control of the downtown area, yet Ukraine says they have some kind of advantage because they control some of the surrounding areas. Explain how or if both things can be true.
Well, they absolutely can be true, John. What you've demonstrated is that the Ukrainians have held what's called the shoulders, those flanks around the city, which means the Ukrainians can continue to access Bakhmut as necessary. They can continue to harass Russian forces and the Wagner group as well. And that gives them some presence there. But I think when you take a step back and you look at that, and your description of this as strategic, it is primarily because it gives Russia the narrative that they're not losing. Look, I can tell you right now, Putin is not winning this engagement. He simply doesn't want to lose. That's the significance of Bakhmut. When you look at it strategically, there is very little that's important about Bakhmut. That's horrible to say because of the devastation, the destruction, the deaths that have been incurred there. But there is nothing to be gained that will alter fundamentally the strategic outcome from what we're seeing right now.
Why is that, Spider? Can you go into that a little more? Again, here's Bakhmut. It's in the east. It's in the Donbass region,
right.
A region where the Russians want total control. If they now control all of this, how does that not impact what could be this spring offensive from the Ukrainians coming up?
It certainly gives the Russians an opportunity to maintain that line of communication from mainland Russia all the way down to Crimea, right? The significance of Bakhmut is that it is a location, exactly as you're describing right now, which is Putin's objective. Bakhmut now has become important only because it affects the Russians' flanks, those shoulder operations as they maneuver from northeast to southwest. That's the significant issue right now. But there are no significant crossroads, rail yards, things that would affect the logistics and the support of operations, either for the Ukrainians trying to reclaim it or the Russians trying to reinforce their efforts in the vicinity of Crimea.
What we continue to see, we believe, from the Ukrainian side, the Russians claiming attacks inside Russian territory, particularly around Belgorod, that city just over the border. Why would the Ukrainians be targeting that?
It's important that they continue to go after the Russians in Russian territory. Now, this is the sticking point. What the Ukrainians need to do is go after Russian forces where they can refit, rest, and then prepare for redeployment. That's what the Ukrainians need to do so that the Russian soldiers don't have any form of sanctuary that give them an opportunity to relax and rest and then get ready for to fight again and go across the border. The Ukrainians have got to be very, very precise. These should not be civilian targets. I don't suggest they are, but to go after those military targets to keep the Russians' head down.
Spider, as always, thank you so much for your help. Retired Major General James Spider Marks.